Could the Peter Mandelson scandal bring down the Prime Minister?
We detail the web of deceit that links Keir Starmer's right-hand man with Jeffrey Epstein's best pal.
Peter Mandelson was extremely comfortable with the company of a rich and filthy man. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And the backbenchers see that as an indictment of Blairism. And it's striking the people who have been quoted today attacking the government, demanding McSweeney goes, calling Mandelson a monster. They're people like Rachel Maskell, Emily Thornberry, representatives of the soft left. Now, we have three pieces of breaking news for you. One, Peter Mandelson has resigned as a member of the House of Lords. Two, Number 10 has reported Peter Mandelson to the police. And three, an anti-monarchy group has reported Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to the police over alleged sex trafficking. Now, what we want to talk about, of course, is the tangled web of deceit that brought us to this moment, and could it consume the Prime Minister?
Dr. Stanley, this is you in full academic professorial role. This must have been what you were like at school and university. You're holding a whiteboard. Yeah. Are you going to Tim-splain something to me? What's going on here?
This is a spider graph. Have you ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
No.
Oh, you should do. It's the funniest thing ever made. And there's a character called Charlie who goes a bit mad and sees conspiracies anywhere, and he covers his walls in bits of paper and string to prove how things connect. And I want to talk through the jabronis, as they would say in Always Sunny, associated with Peter Mandelson.
Yes.
Can we use the word conspiracy? I'm not sure.
I think, conspiracy, cover-up.
Not in the legal sense, but in the cultural, shady, they're all in it together sense.
Yes.
And the thing with the conspiracy is you can't call it one until lots of details have come out, because if you call it too soon, you sound mad. But what I want to do is run through what we now know, how these different people connect, and how Peter Mandelson could end up bringing down the House of Labour.
This is amazing. You've got little laminated pictures of all of the key protagonists.
I did not make these. Our brilliant production team made these.
All right, go on.
But I'm going to begin by putting on the whiteboard the face of this man, who, you know who that is. That's Jeffrey Epstein.
That's his mugshot, I believe.
That's his mugshot. This is Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted paedophile and financier, or whatever it was he did with money. Very, very rich man. And around the year 2002, from what we can make out, he becomes very good friends, indeed best pal, with this man, Peter Mandelson.
Also known as PD.
Right, also known as Petey in their email exchanges. Now, we cannot overemphasize how important Peter Mandelson is to the British left. He is one of the people who invented New Labour.
Yes.
He served 3 times as a minister in the New Labour governments of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, resigning twice in disgrace over issues linked to money. And Mandy, you can see why he gets on with Epstein. And he did an interview recently talking about Epstein as a sociopath. And Mandy insists that he was drawn to people like that, not because of their money, but because of their sort of their worldview, their connections, their ability to see the connections between things. But actually, there are some similarities in personality. These are men who are attracted to money, are attracted to rich and powerful people, and they're known internationally as fixers.
Yes.
Jeff was someone who you'd speak to if you wanted to get a deal done in the Middle East. Mandy was someone you'd speak to if you wanted to get something done in Britain. So there's a sort of a natural affinity between the two people.
Also, can I just say that the email exchanges reveal that they both weren't very good at punctuation, spelling or grammar.
Oh, they think too fast to bother with things like full stops and capital letters.
They're both also huge fans of innuendo and a degree of saucy bants.
Yes.
And I'd also like to point out that photograph that you have of Peter Mandelson there shows him in a Jeffrey Epstein
branded
emblemed sweatshirt, which he was wearing in 2009. That is a year
after the conviction for paedophilia and sex trafficking of Jeffrey Epstein, which raises the question, why did Jeffrey Epstein produce his own branded sweatshirts, and why did Peter Mandelson wear them?
Great.
Anyway, Mandy likes money. And we know that Mandy, after he left government in 2010 because Labour lost power, is looking for a job. And he spoke to Epstein about how do I get a job. And money is a feature in their relationship. For example, Epstein once gave Mandy's husband, at the time partner, Ronaldo da Silva, I'm putting up a photo of him.
There he is, just to describe him, good-looking.
Very good-looking young man.
Dark-haired chap in a yellow jumper.
Today looks a bit more like Paul Burrell, but we all age. And he gave Mandy and Ronaldo $10,000 towards an osteopath course. Yes. We know that over the course of their friendship, Epstein wired Mandy around $75,000.
Although Mandy says he can't remember receiving the money.
He has no recollection. Don't worry, all legal clarifications will come later on. And also, allegedly, that he paid for some commercial flights for him. So there's a financial element to their relationship, and that's very important. When Jeffrey was convicted of paedophilia in 2008, Peter Mandelson privately stood by him.
Yes.
Because he says Jeffrey Epstein lied to him about the nature of that conviction. Nonetheless, he stood by him. And in 2008, that same year,
Yes.
Peter Mandelson returned to Labour government under one Gordon Brown and was placed into the House of Lords. So I'm going to put a photo of Gordon there as we all... I do sort of miss him, don't you?
Yeah,
Look
and
at
his
that
double
face.
chin. He's scary, isn't he, Gordon Brown? When you're reminded of him and his Presbyterian Scottish ways, dour man. But he brought Mandelson back
As
in
business secretary.
because of the global financial
We're at
crisis.
the height of the credit crunch, yes. And bear in mind that Epstein works in finance, yes.
And he had to give him a peerage because by that point he didn't have a seat. He wasn't a sitting MP. So the peerage was given so that he could be a cabinet member via the House of Lords.
Now, the appointment of Peter Mandelson by Gordon Brown took us all by surprise because Gordon's a proper socialist.
Yes.
Mandy is not.
No.
Inventor of New Labour.
He's very happy with people being filthy rich, he famously said.
Of course. And there was a sense that Gordon brought him back because he kind of had to, because Mandy's connections, but also he could heal the rift with Tony Blair and New Labour. And so Mandy comes in. He has a very sensitive and important job.
But it was weird just because Gordon Brown always resented Peter Mandelson for not backing him as Labour leader and indeed future Prime Minister in 1994 and instead favouring Blair. So they have beef, but again, it kind of speaks to that idea that there are successive Labour Prime Ministers who think they can't live without
They
Peter
can't
Mandelson.
function without Peter,
Right.
the fixer. He's indispensable
Yes.
to your
Okay.
party. Now, we know that Mandelson repaid that loyalty by feeding market-critical information, market-sensitive information, back to Jeffrey Epstein. This is very important because this is what people say could be illegal. We know that he leaked to him minutes of conversations, including, for instance, with Larry Summers, who was head of finance in the United States at the time.
Good friend of Tony Blair.
We know that he gave him copies of economic advice being passed to the Prime Minister. And we know, and this is truly extraordinary, that he gave Epstein advance notice of a bailout to save the euro.
Yes.
This is important.
That's significant because Jeffrey Epstein is a financier and he has got lots of fingers in lots of pies and he's got lots of clients
Yes.
that actually could do with getting advance notice of extraordinary, incredible and influential decisions that might be made at UK government level.
This is a banking crisis. The debate within government is how do we bail out the banks, but also should we tax them? Should we punish them for what they did?
Yes.
We now know, thanks to the Epstein files, that in 2009, Mandelson appeared to suggest that the boss of JP Morgan should, quote, mildly threaten the Chancellor over a banker's bonus tax.
And it should be stated that Alistair Darling, now deceased, was renowned for being straight as an arrow,
Oh, yes.
extremely respectable, and certainly not someone that would be susceptible to any of these sorts of tactics.
Yes, absolutely. Nonetheless, the Labour Party loses the 2010 election. Mandelson was personally involved in negotiations to try to set up a coalition with the Lib Dems, but it wasn't going to happen. And Gordon Brown lost his job. And we now know again that Mandy passed on advance notice to Epstein of Gordon Brown leaving office, saying, quote, finally got him to go today. Extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Now, by the early 2010s, of course, Epstein's various scandals have become public knowledge. We know what this man is like. We know finally that he is linked to Prince Andrew, who I'm adding to the board. There's the lovely Prince. No, formerly, no, sorry, he's no longer called Prince.
He is the Andrew formerly known
Mountbatten
as Prince.
Windsor.
Yeah.
And this is also the era of Corbyn. And the Labour Party shifts dramatically to the left. And that's not good for people like Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson is now suddenly irrelevant in the world of the British left. So he starts to plot a comeback. And a critical part in his comeback, I'll add Tony Blair to the board, because it's important always to have Tony on the board because he's watching us all the time.
Yes.
Peter Mandelson is in contact with this man called Morgan McSweeney.
Oh, there he is.
And there is Morgan. Morgan McSweeney is going to become the chief of staff to Keir Starmer and his new government. And McSweeney's whole project is purge the socialists, blue Labour, drag the Labour Party back to the centre ground.
Yes.
You and I may not feel Labour's that moderate, but that's how it's perceived within Labour circles. It is said that Mandelson and McSweeney are so close that the two men at one point were speaking every single day.
Wow.
Right? 2024, this man becomes Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Hello, my father was a toolmaker.
Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer appoints, as I say, Morgan McSweeney as his chief of staff, who has connections to Peter Mandelson. And Peter Mandelson is then appointed as ambassador to the United States.
Yes.
The resurrection of his career.
Plum roll.
Peter is back to where he wants to be on the international scene, indispensable to his party. Now, in the course of that, he will have had to have been vetted. It is suggested by some that the vetting was insufficient and light. With Keir in number 10, we need a new ambassador to the United States.
Yes.
Morgan McSweeney recommends his best pal, Peter Mandelson, for the job.
Who knows a few Americans?
He does. Mandelson has to undergo some sort of security vetting. It is now a consensus that the vetting was insufficient.
Yes.
And also...
The vetting may well have just been, Peter, would you like this job? Yes, please.
Very much so. And also, an interesting question was asked in the House of Commons on Monday by one Richard Bergen, Socialist Labour MP, and that's significant.
Corbyn's bestie.
Well, he's a friend of Corbyn, who asked if the people vetting Peter Mandelson had themselves been properly vetted. So in other words, there are questions being raised about just how serious number 10 is about security vetting. Nonetheless, Mandelson gets the job, goes to the United States, does pretty well, actually, very popular. But then, of course, further details emerge about his friendship. Best pal, yum yum, all that stuff comes out.
This all comes out in that 50th birthday book that is released to the public. So around 7 months into his tenure, trying to cozy up to Donald Trump, be the Trump whisperer along with Starmer, he comes unstuck.
Yes, correct. At this point, the murd hits the fan. And everyone's saying Mandelson must go. We know of one person in number 10 who was defending him, Morgan McSweeney.
Yes.
Not only recommended him for the ambassadorship, but fought against Mandelson being withdrawn from the ambassadorship. To give you a sense of their relationship, Peter Mandelson once said of Morgan McSweeney, quote, "I don't know who and how and when he was invented, but whoever it was, they will find their place in heaven."
Wow. There seems to be a little bit of an infatuation going on there. Interesting.
But one person is watching this and sees the opportunity for revenge. One Gordon Brown.
And he's looking scary there, let's be honest.
Gordon has said the following, quote, "On September 10th last year, I wrote to the Cabinet Secretary to ask him to investigate the veracity of information contained in the Epstein papers about the sale of assets arising from the banking collapse and communications about them between Lord Mandelson and Mr. Epstein."
Yes.
For those who don't remember, he always used to say
He did. Oh.
And this was on September the 10th. On September the 10th, he wrote to say, you need to investigate this man.
This is the very day
same day
his successor,
Keir Starmer, stands up in the House of Commons and says this.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying the victims of Epstein are the forefront of our minds. He was a despicable criminal who committed the most heinous crimes and destroyed the lives of so many women and girls. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
One day later, he was sacked.
And in that intervening 24 hours, we had a number of people coming out and justifying the Prime Minister's support of Peter Mandelson, including Mandelson's successor as Business Secretary, Peter Kyle, who, it's worth noting, said at the time that although the vetting process had turned up links to Epstein, the Labour grandees' singular talents meant they felt it was worth the risk.
But he is not disgraced, he does not lose his peerage, and he is not kicked out of the Labour Party. That only happens as a result of the recent revelation of 3 million Epstein documents, which include all of the stuff that I've just discussed about potential leaking of confidential information to Epstein.
And it includes that extraordinary image of him in his Y-fronts.
In his Y-fronts.
At one of Epstein's properties.
The Labour Party began, finally, disciplinary action to remove Mandelson from Labour, but Mandelson resigned before they could kick him out. So that makes Starmer look weak. In frustration, two political parties have finally called in this man, not him personally.
No. Oh, but look, it's Peter Blexley. You're nicked.
But we've chosen him, a favourite of the Daily T,
Yes.
to represent the police.
The plot, indeed.
Because, given everything we've discussed, one might ask, are there not good grounds to open a criminal investigation against Peter Mandelson? I'll just put this big thing down for the moment. I asked Nigel Farage about this at a press conference he gave this afternoon about Reform's plans to save the pub. At that moment, it had just been announced that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had been reported by this anti-monarchy group to the police, and I also asked him about Mandelson. Nigel, our readers will be delighted by everything you've said about pubs this afternoon. Thank you so much, because we've been running the Save Our Pubs campaign. It's great stuff, but I'm going to have to ask you about Mandy. I'm sorry.
I thought it was all about pubs today. It's so disappointing. It really is.
First question, picking up on what you said about all the warnings were there with Mandelson. You know, he'd been in government twice before and sacked, still hired by Gordon Brown, still then hired by Keir Starmer. How do you account for Peter Mandelson constantly returning to Labour and working for it? How can you explain the strange appeal of this man? And second question, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has just been reported to the police for alleged sex trafficking. Do you think that's an appropriate course of action?
I think for the royal family, what started off as an embarrassment is rapidly turning into a disaster. And perhaps it's the biggest scandal to engulf the royals since 1936. Very, very serious. Look, you know, the only answer I can give you to your specific question is, if that is if there is a genuine justification for making that complaint and it's not vexatious, there is no reason why his treatment by the law should not be exactly the same as all the rest of us. And I think the country would agree with that absolutely overwhelmingly. But yes, I mean, the King has acted relatively quickly on all of this, and thank goodness, frankly, that he did. As to whether much more is going to come out, I mean, just who knows? Mandelson, what's the appeal? You know, how is it that he sort of says, look into my eyes, I want to be back in the cabinet, I want to be ambassador? He's very articulate, he's highly intelligent, he's incredibly well briefed, probably the best networker in Westminster in the last 30 years. There isn't a telephone number of note that somehow isn't on Mandy's list, and I think he's able, when he talks to people, to give them the impression that he knows more about what's happening in the world, more about any particular subject than perhaps anybody else they can appoint. So, and the funny thing is, it's not all a con job. It's not all bull. He genuinely is incredibly well briefed. I mean, I watched him as Trade Commissioner, and yes, he was on Deripaska's yacht, but the actual subject, the brief, even at his hearing, I'd never heard anybody as impressive in all my 20 years in the European Parliament. You know, the guy is very, very bright, but clearly has a taste for money and has a taste for bad company. So, yeah, there is this sort of almost bewitching appeal. But, you know, you can forgive a friend, you can forgive a family member, you can forgive a party colleague one big mistake in their lives, and we all do it. And actually, in the spirit of Christian forgiveness, we should do it. But if we start trusting repeat offenders, they're not the idiots we are.
On the money front, Peter Mandelson's argument that I don't recall these sums of money is going to strike people as odd because they're very big sums of money.
Yeah.
So either you should be able to say, that's not true, because I would remember receiving $75,000, or else you're so rich that you don't recall if you've received $75,000. So
there was a subsequent email where he's bragging about the fact that he's got this position for $1 million a year.
Right.
So maybe there is that, but then you would also counter-argue, if you're that obsessed by money, I mean, usually the thing about the rich is they really do know how much money they've got,
Yes.
where they're receiving it and how much
Yes.
tax they're paying on it. So again, that seems confusing to me that you wouldn't know, regardless of whether you were completely minted, that you hadn't been given 75 grand.
But Camilla, you mentioned the job he was looking at. I assume that is the Deutsche Bank job
Yes.
he was interested in, which was going to pay $1 million plus bonuses of between $3 and $5 million.
We're in the wrong business.
We're in the wrong job, aren't
Yes.
we? This man was business secretary during a banking crisis,
Yes.
discussing the regulation of banks.
Yes.
He is best friends with a financier who happens to be a convicted paedophile as well.
Yeah.
But also, he is sharing with him market-sensitive information. And upon leaving office, he is discussing with him how he can go about getting a job in banks.
And he is sharing that information as business secretary to a socialist Labour Prime Minister
Yes.
who had used the phrase global financial crisis to explain away all of Labour's woes at that point, and was presenting himself, and I think genuinely, but this was the image of Labour, and this is what was going on in the background with Mandelson, presenting himself as a politician of the people who wanted Britain to get through this extraordinarily difficult period where people were losing their homes and debt was skyrocketing, because he was a man of the people. And I think that juxtaposition does need to be clearly stated, because this is a Labour socialist government designed to help the working man and woman. And meanwhile, you have a key and central figure that is frankly behaving in the completely opposite way, and is now still able to clock in and out of the House of Lords for £371 a day.
I think in defence of Gordon Brown, if you take the economic advice that he was received, that Mandy allegedly leaked to Epstein, what that advice actually says is in and of itself interesting. It says the problem during the credit crunch era was not government spending or personal spending, it was trying to get businesses to invest. So one reason why Mandelson was hired was because of all these contacts, because he was friendly with bankers, because they wanted a business secretary who could try to persuade people to reinvest in the country.
I know, but it was also down to the chicanery and the dishonesty with regard to buying up debt and negative equity and all the rest of it, of precisely the kind of people that Epstein and Mandelson were networking with and enabling in the background.
But this is why this is politically significant, because we currently have a Labour government with a massive majority, so our country is essentially held hostage by this party. And how this party responds to this scandal, what it does with Morgan McSweeney and possibly Keir Starmer, is very important. Now, the left of the parliamentary party believes the reason why the credit crunch happened is because Britain was too cosy with bankers. And it believes the reason why we've not had proper socialism since is because our party is captured by bankers. And for them, this scandal proves this was all correct. And the man they place so much blame upon is Morgan McSweeney, who they say forced out Corbyn. I mean, why is Corbyn expelled from the Labour Party and Peter Mandelson is left to resign? Well, anti-Semitism is the answer to that, but that tends to get forgotten. Nonetheless, they're saying it is this man's capture of the party and his creature, Keir Starmer, that prevents Labour from doing really socialist things that could help people in this country, like a wealth tax. Now, you and I might disagree with that analysis, but the important thing is that's what the left thinks. The left feels they have been vindicated by the Mandelson scandal, and they are coming after Morgan McSweeney. And if McSweeney goes, which is likely people think to happen after the May elections, when Labour's going to receive a drubbing, even worse now after this story, then even if Keir Starmer clings on, it won't be his government anymore.
No.
It will drift to the left, because only the left is ready to step in with an alternative manifesto.
Okay, so therefore, by association, to conclude, the figures who have been strengthened by this entire scandal as we continue to discuss Keir Starmer's future and a future leader are Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham. Because this party can now, as it has now, as Blairism and being comfortable with people being filthy rich and leaning into blue Labour has been exposed for the scam that it is, there's only now a direction of travel for the Labour Party, parliamentary membership and onwards, in a leftwards direction.
Peter Mandelson was extremely comfortable with the company of a rich and filthy man. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And the backbenchers see that as an indictment of Blairism. And it's striking the people who have been quoted today attacking the government, demanding McSweeney goes, calling Mandelson a monster. They're people like Rachel Maskell, Emily Thornberry, representatives of the soft left. There is one other person who might come out of this stronger, and that's on the other side of the dispatch box.
Kemi Badenoch.
Kemi Badenoch.
Because comparatively, we've got the Labour Party now completely mired in scandal.
And reform is slightly tainted by the
Yes.
sympathy for Russia brush.
So actually, in all this right now, Badenoch appears to be the only clean skin. I mean, that's probably a little bit unduly harsh on reform. Nothing nefarious has been proved against them at all. But she must capitalise on this tomorrow at PMQs, Tim.
Yeah, it's an important one.
And we'll be covering it.
If you're enjoying our journalism, why not sign up to From the Editor, our free email newsletter? Start your day with the latest news and opinion, plus our bite-sized puzzles. Scan the QR code to sign up free today.